The world's greatest superheroes collect Superman Peace on Earth, Batman War on Crime, Shazam Power of Hope, Wonder Woman Spirit of Truth, JLA Secret Origin, and JLA Liberty and Justice. It's written by Paul Dini, who's worked on several comics for DC, as well as wrote for Batman the Animated Series, and the first two Arkham games. And these comics are illustrated by Alex Ross. The World's Greatest Superheroes is a great introduction to the characters featured and their ideologies. The book focuses on how the heroes protect people and inspire society, and why they do this, rather than how they are challenged by a villain. Which is refreshing to see because helping average people is the main reason for why most of these characters are superheroes in the first place. This premise might sound boring because it's less intense than most superhero stories, but this book stays interesting because the focus is on the hero's internal thoughts about how satisfying and important their deeds are. I'm pretty much going to get into the details of the stories right away, so if my description of this book interests you, then finish watching this after you've read the book to avoid spoilers. There aren't really any big reveals to be spoiled anyway, but I usually prefer going in fresh. This is one of my all-time favorite comics, so I would highly recommend checking it out. The first story is Superman Peace on Earth. In it, Superman tries to solve world hunger for a day. He wants to help everyone on Earth out, and by providing food to the needy and starving, and also set an example for mankind to inspire them into creating a more sustainable solution for world hunger. However, he runs into his own limitations, like the food he brings not being enough to remedy the situation in some countries, or his help is taken advantage of by greedy dictators hoarding the food, and Superman is disheartened that it's not his place to stay in the country and protect the citizens from abuse. Most of the people he visits are extremely thankful, and Paul Dini's voice for Superman conveys how immensely satisfying helping people out is for him. That also makes the people that reject his help even more sorrowful for him. But ultimately, it's an optimistic tale about how he wants everyone to be alright, free and equal, and how humankind challenges that. The next story is Batman War on Crime. We get a bit more lengthy and detailed introduction to the character of Batman in here, explaining who he is and how he uses fear and mystery to his advantage while fighting crime. Also, how he uses his public identity as Bruce Wayne to network with upper-class people. Basically, what happens is that a young boy's parents are murdered in front of him in a crime-ridden neighborhood, and that incident motivates Batman to essentially go to war on crime in that neighborhood, running out the drug dealers and gangs. During Batman's excursion, he comes across the orphan boy from earlier, who's fallen into crime. The boy is depicted as a perversion of young Bruce Wayne if crime was the best option for him to process his grief with. Batman realizes that he can rectify the situation, and throwing the kid in jail isn't the solution. So he sympathizes with the boy, giving him advice about how to deal with his despair. Then the boy hugs him, and it's really touching, because Batman isn't always that tender. The crime got into the neighborhood in the first place because the main supplier of jobs, a factory, shut down many years ago. The criminals can be run out, but the decision to partake in crime can't be physically dealt with. But crime is the most productive option, can be alleviated by Wayne Enterprises investing in an initiative to redevelop the neighborhood and restart production in that factory again. There's another character that serves as a foil for Bruce Wayne, which is a developer who plans to gentrify the neighborhood, but he doesn't care about the well-being of the neighborhood and neglects the harm he does and the potential good he could do if he used his abundance of money for more than just himself. My favorite story in World's Greatest Superheroes is Shazam Power of Hope. It starts off with Billy Batson starting to get discouraged because his responsibilities as Shazam are starting to become overwhelming as the job starts to take more than it gives. He gets a bunch of letters requesting favors or product endorsements which try to take advantage of his goodwill. He finds a letter from a sick child at the children's hospital, which he gets excited about that opportunity to help. He finds it really gratifying to be able to instill hope for the future in the kids by granting wishes, or just being a friend, like playing with them or just spending time with them. The relationship he has with people is symbiotic, He gives them hope by helping them out, and their happiness and gratitude gives him hope and encouragement in return for his good doing as Shazam. He does run into some limitations like not being able to help everyone out, which saddens him, like how he couldn't prevent a terminally ill child from dying. Or when an abused and depressed kid that is afraid of Shazam, he's already lost hope and doesn't trust adults. So Shazam decides to take another approach and befriends the kid as Billy Batson, which ends up making the kid happy, and the kid's abusive father is also confronted by Shazam. I find that so sweet. Usually superheroes are associated with epic feats of strength and heroism, but something as simple as befriending a lonely kid in need is potentially equally as meaningful, especially for the kid. And I love seeing a superhero doing good deeds that superpowers aren't needed for, while, still telling an interesting and sophisticated story, and in turn those acts of kindness are made more heroic. Wonder Woman in Wonder Woman Spirit of Truth has the most dynamic character arc out of any of the characters in this collection. At first, she's saving the innocent and stopping the injustice. She starts to intervene in more political situations. Once she goes to the Middle East during a neutral time and the people reject her and throw stones at her. That makes sense, considering that she's a force of power wearing battle armor with the colors of the United States flag on it, and the people think that she's there to incite conflict. Earlier in the book, her mother Hippolyta doesn't understand why the people don't see her good deeds and accept her as a benevolent guide. So Diana meets with Superman, who gives her advice about people wanting to be in control of their own destinies and not forced into changing from, a godly savior, which is how Diana and her mother rule over Themyscira. Rather, working alongside the people to better represent what they truly want. That's why Superman finds his alter ego as Clark Kent so important, because he can get genuine human-to-human interaction with them to learn about their views and motives. I love how Paul Dini writes Superman, by the way. He has a warm and wise voice, and that's great. I also like that there's a couple issues between this book and Superman Peace on Earth. Then it's more surprising to see Superman show up again in here. So Wonder Woman takes up a human disguise to walk among the people. By interacting directly with the people, she too gets a better understanding of their views. Essentially, she becomes an embodiment of the spirit of truth. Because she better understands how to properly represent the people's truth, she'll challenge the oppressors that conceal or distort the people's truth, and she'll try to expose nefarious secrets as well. The previous solo hero books started with a 2-page origin for the featured character, an homage to early Golden Age comics, but JLA Secret Origin almost exclusively contains 2-page origins of different members of the Justice League, serving as some build-up to the final issue in the collection, JLA Liberty and Justice. Some of the origins are more interesting than others. However, it's not completely the writer's fault because they didn't create the origins in the first place. Some of the origins are as simple as where the hero's powers come from, and that they use them for good, which is fine, but it doesn't necessarily get me interested in that character. The best of the origins get into the head of the characters a little bit and express how they're unique. Green Arrow and Plastic Man's origin made me consider looking into these characters. They provide a good context for who those characters are and what makes them different and interesting from other heroes. JLA Liberty and Justice starts by illustrating how the members of the Justice League are beings of great power, but even greater in their dedication to helping and protecting humankind. The early pages also flesh out the team dynamic. The Justice League is summoned to Africa to investigate an outbreak of a plague that paralyzes the infected with a full body paralysis. Confusion and panic breaks out in the rest of the world as the Justice League is trying to figure out what's going on and find a cure. An airstrike is sent by another African country because the paralyzed victims look like they're dead. Rumors of an alien invasion also spread, then riots and looting start to occur. The Justice League has to assert crowd control to establish order, which causes some distrust between the population and the Justice League. In the confusion of the situation, motives were unknown and it looked like as if the Justice League were using their great power to impose their own rule on the people. Martian Manhunter, who is the main protagonist of the story, has a great speech at the end explaining that the Justice League members are part of the same society, and some of them part of the same workforce as, their fellow humans, and that they share the same goals as everyone else. they agree with what the people have decided is best for them and want to preserve that, not to tell the people what's good for them. This book is longer than the others and has a slower pace, giving it a more epic and mythic feel. It also is the only story with speech bubbles in this collection, which took a moment for me to acclimate to. The story also escalates nicely as it goes from a virus outbreak to riots to a Justice League press conference explaining their actions. None of the other stories quite get as intense as this, so I like that they all kind of build up to this one and make it more climactic. Alex Ross's painted art is beautiful and adds a mythic gravitas, making the heroes look godly. Especially in the splash pages for JLA Liberty and Justice of the whole team, they look like a pantheon of gods. I want to call this book a masterpiece, but I don't know if that's for me to say. I certainly think it's pretty amazing and frequently revisit it. I wasn't initially going to give a score in this review, but I feel like I've thought about it enough to give The World's Greatest Superheroes a 5 out of 5.